And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today I'm talking with Angelo Ponzi. Angelo, thank you for being my guest today.
Well, Michael, thank you for having me. I'm excited about this, and I always enjoy having these conversations and hopefully imparting a little bit of knowledge to those that are listening.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a great conversation because Angelo runs a company, Craft Marketing and Branding. So they work with business owners, which is who I talk to all the time. And you come at business growth and building blueprints for companies to help them grow from kind of a different angle. And that's what we want to really dive into. So as we get there, Angelo, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Well, you know what, it's been a journey, but because of my kind of research background and planning background, even from the early days when I was in advertising, I became that guy, became the guy that wrote the plans. I became the guy that did the research, and that just kind of always kept evolving. Even when I started my own marketing firm, that's what we focused on was the same thing I do today, basically, except none of the technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And and so for me, that's always evolved, whether it was client side, sitting in the director of marketing or VP of marketing or CMO or chief strategy officer. It's never changed for me. It just continued to evolve. And as technology changed, more ways to do this. But to me, that's the key. It's it's understanding the market in that you're competing in, understanding your customers, your prospects, your competition, and utilizing that to help define your strategy and ultimately, how you're going to get there. And some of that might include tactics or certain kinds of tactics, but ultimately that strategy part is not just about marketing. I was told recently my better title is chief strategy officer, not marketing officer, because I'm holistic. So I deal in sales. I talk to the operations guy. I've actually run the accounting departments and the HR departments. And so trying to understand holistically of how the whole company works in bringing, helping to shape that growth plan, because it isn't just about marketing, because there's a whole lot of folks that contribute to the success of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So thanks for that background because that's really cool. And you said a couple things in there that I really want to dive into. I love strategic because that is really, really important. And I really believe that's where a lot of business owners are missing the boat because they're not strategic. They run after the next shiny object of the month or they whatever, and they think marketing is the key to everything. And it is a big key, but there's so much more to it. And when you were just listening to the different things that you help with, prospects, customers, uh, competition. I think so many times business owners don't even think about that. And so help me understand, or let's talk about some of the ways you go about strategically helping your clients just really almost take a step back, dare I say, to get a better view of what we need to do before we can take a step forward. Is that fair?
Perfect, perfect. I'll use some examples if you don't mind.
Oh, beautiful.
So, client in the really more of a manufacturer distributor
Hmm.
in the Christmas world, if you will, commercial Christmas. And when I started working with them, they've been around for 25 years. But what we did with the new GM that was there, we spent a good couple months digging into the historical data. Why?
Hmm.
Because we need to also learn from history. Were there any nuggets, anything we can glean? Because we were trying to put together new approaches to growing the business. They're very much a Southern California business, but to grow, we were going to have to get out of California. So one of the things we found in digging around the nuggets was 30% of every proposal historically they win. So now, of course, became which 30% do you want to
Right.
win? The $1,000 orders or the $500,000 orders?
Right.
We were able to notice that their salespeople were having on average, had a book of business of about 700 companies. Only maybe 100, 150 were actually the bigger dollar. The rest were, $1,000 orders, $500 orders. And so we had to strategically figure out, how can I get you back into the market working more versus handling little piddly business, if you will, when I potentially put an assistant there. Then the other thing we looked at was renewal business, because, if they would say did a mall, well, Christmas comes every year, but they don't buy every year. So we could see cycles of purchase, big orders, small orders. And now we had to start figuring in how are we going to grow if our new business acquisition, kind of fluctuates, because this year we need X and next year we need 2X because the renewal business is down. So we kind of mapped all that out. The next thing we did is we actually went out and did interviews with their distributors and their customers to try to understand their perception of the company. Why us? Why not somebody else? What were issues? Those kinds of things. And we dug into all of that to help us shape how we really could go back to market and grow outside. We looked at their vertical markets. They were marketing to 5 vertical markets when I was first started. The budgets were spread across equally, but when we dug into the data, only 3 of those vertical markets were actually generating revenue. So then we started, okay, well, do we need to really be spending 40% of our budget on 2 markets that are doing nothing? So we started, again, being very logical in our approach to try to figure things out, and then laying that plan of how are we going to do it? Who's responsible? How do we grow? Do we make you responsible for Kentucky? No. Yes. Right? Because I don't want 5 people going into Kentucky, one selling to malls, one selling to entertainment, one selling to venues, right? So we had to really think out the sales approach. And then on the other side, at the time we were dealing with, just prior to, this was 16, 17, and then all of a sudden we hit into COVID, for example, and now we can't get the inventory that we need. So now, again, all those really contribute to the overall marketing and sales efforts of the organization and the profitability. Another one last year, for example, a med tech company. When I first started working with them, they had a growth trajectory of 37% growth. What do I know? Okay.
Yeah.
But when I got into their data, they only grew on an average of 6% a year for the last 5 years. So, okay, where did 37% come from?
Yeah.
When I looked at and started breaking down the kind of how many eggs in one basket, 63%, give or take, of their business was from 3 companies. So red flags, right? So we started seeing all these red flags and these issues. We looked at process, which was contributing to a lengthy sales cycle. So again, I think it's, to your point earlier, it isn't about, hey, I want to be there. We're just going to run some ads. We're going to, you're right. There's a whole lot of stuff. Why? Because now I know what motivates you, how to change your behavior, who you're buying, why you don't trust us, why you do trust us. Can I leverage that knowledge to talk to other groups within that customer segmentation? And so when I say we spend time doing the due diligence and trying to understand that, it's extremely important, because now I know what's going to motivate you. I know what your concerns are. Now I can address those in your vertical market. Now in the next vertical market, it might not be the same, but I have to know all of that. So that's where, we play today, and where I've played for many, many years. And, this company is a little over 10 and a half years old. And we really haven't changed much as far as, the expanding our services. We've got into some tactical things, but that's on a needs basis, not because I really want to.
Get that. No, well, you said some things that were really interesting, because you went out and talked to customers and got their feedback, which was good. But you also looked at the verticals and found 2 of them that aren't producing. And I think business owners don't do that. They say, well, that's what we're doing, and we're going to spend the money, and we're going to change the market. And if you just do that, the work that you do, and I think one of the biggest challenges, and you would probably echo this, is, Alfonso, we don't want to do that. That takes a lot of time and honestly expertise to ask the right questions. Is that true?
It's very true. What we find is, frankly, most people, I'm giving a broad statement.
Sure.
We might get some hate mail on this one, but they work in the business, not on the business.
Yeah.
I asked a question one time. I was surveying these CEOs, and there was probably 50 of them. And I asked them, how much time do you spend working on your business versus in? And it was like maybe 10% a month. Well, how do you be strategic? How do you, right? They're so in the transactional of, hey, we got to get that sale. We got to close that. We've got to, do the next budget. And yet that kind of, why am I doing all that? I mean, budgeting recently wrote a blog on that. I mean, there's lots of different ways to create a budget.
Oh yeah.
But one of the ones that I suggest is, especially if you have a product, is go figure out which one of your products are generating not only revenue but profitability. Which
Yeah.
ones are, the stinkers that you need to get rid of, even though you might love it. It might have been your first product, but it's not doing anything for you, right? So really digging
Yeah.
down, that, to your point, that stuff takes time, and nobody wants to take the time to do that.
That's right. But and which is sad because that is where a lot of the gold is found, as you talked about in these last examples, and that's true of dare I say virtually every business because we get going, and if you've been in business for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, you almost forget, and you get into a well, we've always done it this way. Well, good. Can we ask some questions? Can we maybe find a way to leverage some things? The whole salesperson approach, right? And where is the best way to do that? Talking about strategy before tactics. And it's just really, well, I don't want to say it's simple. Once you find those nuggets, then the ahas start coming in and you start connecting the dots to go, well, what if we pivoted like this that probably most business owners, dare I say, they wouldn't even see because the data is there. The data it's data driven
Yes.
more so than anything else. Is that a good summary?
That's a great summary. I mean, you know, I tell clients, you've got to get out of the boardroom and talking to yourself because,
Yeah.
number one, how many of your products are you going to buy this year? None. Right. So quit talking to yourself, get out into the market and talk to the people that are actually buying. And there's
Yeah.
tons of case studies of companies that did not do that, had massive failures. And, a great product does not guarantee success. We've seen,
Yeah.
that hundreds and hundreds of times, or they make strategic decisions. But one of my, favorite is the fact that the digital camera was actually invented by Kodak,
Yeah.
but they didn't back it. They basically said, nobody's going to want to look at pictures on your television. And look what happened,
That's
and
so true.
same thing. Blockbuster had a chance to buy Netflix and Redbox, and it, nobody wants to wait to what get a movie in the mail again.
Yeah.
But that's that disruption, and so there's that constant keeping your fingers on the pulse of what's going on, and
Yeah.
that only happens if you're working on the business on a regular basis and
Right.
really paying attention to what's going on. I mean, I do competitive analysis, and I tell companies all the time, this isn't a one and done. You've got to keep doing it. Why? Because your
Yeah.
competition is not staying stagnant. So if you're
Right.
not looking at them and they're looking at you, there's potential issues. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, and the other thing that I like about what you guys do is the strategy, but it's the market research, talking to looking at competitors. I tell most of my audience that most of them sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. I mean, they all look the same, they all sound the same. It's like, stop it. You've got to have a different message that actually connects with the emotional movement, the emotional pain point of your audience so that they'll start moving towards you. And that's how you start differentiating it. But a lot of times that message, what I have found is comes from within the bowels of the organization. And it's a lot of times for the entrepreneurs I work with, it's part of their, dare I say, their origin story. It's why are you a financial advisor or a personal injury attorney? There's a story there that might connect. Do you find that a lot of people who come to you are those generic, they're not saying something, although they probably have something very important to say, but they just can't see it?
Yeah, I see that a lot. Most entrepreneurs, again, to kind of dovetail off of what you're saying, I mean, their brand is them, right? It's who
Mm-hmm.
they are, and they might have a name, but at the end of the day, as they're building that brand, the personality, the characteristics of the brand is them,
Yeah.
and we're imparting our own belief systems and our ethics and things like that. Now you're, a mega corporation that's long been
Right.
gone, right? But there is a story, and it is, and I think at its roots, it's about storytelling. I mean,
Mm,
I can't throw a rock without hitting a financial planner, a lawyer, right? And
right.
wealth manager. I belong to these organizations. I'll go to a meeting, there's 40 people, and 35 of them are from those three categories. So and then it's how do they differentiate? And I always pay
Yeah.
attention. And I mean, my favorite is when, you know, the guy gets up and says, "Hi, I'm a commercial insurance broker, and here's what I do, and I do this, and I do this." And the next guy gets up and says, "I'm a commercial insurance broker, and I just do everything like Michael." Well, why do I
Yeah.
want to hire Michael? I want to hire this guy over here, right? What do I want to hire you for? I want to hire Michael. And so, how do you tell that story? How do you, you know? And again, I hate to say elevator pitch, but what is that kind of 30 seconds, 10 seconds, really? How do you communicate? I was talking to a tech company, this was years ago, and my first meeting with them, and I said, "Tell me your elevator pitch." I'm not kidding. 40 minutes later, and I said, elevator, not the Empire State Building. I mean, you
Exactly.
took me on a ride and you kind of lost me halfway through this thing, right? Because I'm not paying attention.
Right.
And so it's important. You got a split second. You're at a networking meeting. How do you tell somebody? If I say I'm in marketing, it's like, well, yeah, let's over half the people in this room. So you
Yeah.
have to figure out what's going to make, to your point earlier, an emotional connection or strike a pain point so you can continue the conversation. And the same thing when you're talking to somebody, you only have a short period of time to try to, you know, get that next step of that conversation going.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just say, "I'm an accountant, I'm a marketing guy, I'm a
Yeah.
wealth manager."
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So are 50 other people. Why you,
Yeah.
right? Why you, not them?
So I know you've got a big idea around helping business owners, your clients, create a blueprint around marketing based really around I call it market research. That may not be the right terms, but because you bring the strategy in, you're doing a lot of the analysis. Unpack that a little bit more about how you help your clients create this. It's really a business growth game plan because it does include marketing, but it might include some other things. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you think of it again, just go to a house, right? You wouldn't build a house without a print. But part of the print is, you know, how many rooms do you want? How do you want the flow to go? Where do you want, you know, your television to hang? Where do you want your kitchen? What do you want? Do you want an open air kitchen? You want it closed? And it's the same kind of thing in building. And really they are revenue growth plans, not necessarily marketing plans, because there is a lot of areas. I'll go back to the Christmas company I was talking about. So as we just identified our vertical markets, we started looking at where are these, I'll call them entertainment venues, let's say, for example, or malls around the country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who makes sense? Well, as we started to target those, it's like, well, we're going to be an extra 10, 15+% more because we have to ship from California. What do? Let's buy a distribution center. Let's put a distribution center in the middle of the country. So we can go East Coast, West Coast, and cut down on our shipping. Yeah, but if we go to Texas to do installations, I need labor. Well, I'm not going to send 15 guys from California. Now I need to find labor pools. So now we're looking around where are companies that do something similar as far as installation of other types of stuff that we could potentially hire in the wintertime to do these things. So that becomes more, again, that strategic plan. How do you grow? It's just not saying, well, we're going to go, you know, sell in Chicago. Yeah, but that brings a lot of potential issues in Chicago, right? Now we got winter, Texas, we don't have, right? So you have to look at all those different elements that
Yeah.
impact growth. And then, you know, like the case with the Christmas guys. I mean, Christmas is, believe it or not, is a 364-day a year, not five, because they take Christmas off. But literally the day after Christmas, they start again, whether it's
Yeah.
taking down or selling. They're already selling Christmas in 2025. So there's this constant evolution. However, you know, you're talking deposit checks, for example, versus cash flow. So, you know, we've spent several years like trying to identify an acquisition that would allow us to smooth out our cash flow in those kind of earlier months as we were building the business. And while we found a bunch, we bought one that we also use at Christmas time, but they do other things throughout the year. So we cracked that nut, but that took many years to do that.
Yeah.
Again, is that marketing? Yeah, part of it is,
Yeah.
but part of it's not, right? It's about that overall business and how do you grow? How do you grow efficiently? And you know, anytime you acquire a business, you got cultural issues, you got integration issues, you got technology issues, right?
Oh, yeah.
That
Oh,
marketing,
yeah.
yeah, might have
Yeah.
something to do with it, but it's about how do I grow that business? All that should be part of that revenue growth plan.
Yeah. I like that phrase, revenue growth plan, because that's really what it is. And if you've got a bottleneck in one part of your business,
Mhm.
you may not notice it unless you have a good perspective, a good purview of the whole business, right? And so many times there's a bottleneck somewhere and we blame sales or marketing. Client conversion is not right or whatever. Well, that that's the presenting issue. What's
Mhm.
the real problem? What's the real bottleneck? And that seems to be one of your expertises, if that's a word, to to come in and look at and to say, well, okay, we need to dive in here a little bit and see how that plays into it. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's about being in present, if you will.
Mm,
Uh, I sat in on a sales meeting for a client my first time, and I was starting to kind of oversee it, but I was still, again, I'm fractional, right? And so that they would say, so hey, Michael, how'd you do last week? You go, well, I just didn't really do that well. I made some calls, but I just didn't get there. And the response was, okay, next week let's see you improve. And I was like, whoa, timeout. You just let him off the hook. Why? Let's dig into it. Why was there an issue? What was the problem? Did you not make enough calls? Were you stuck on one client and that one's going to sell, but you didn't get to the other five? I mean, and again, so there's constant evaluation. A company I worked with, my first day on the job was at the sales meeting, and in their pipeline, let's say they had 10 prospects. The youngest prospect in the pipeline was there for 150 days. The oldest was there well over a year, in going like a year and a half. Why?
yeah.
What's happening? Are we just bad salespeople, or we can't close? And after several months, what we concluded was they waited to the very end of a lengthy process to hand
Mm-hmm.
the documents to the lawyers, 90% of which was just the same old, same old. And I
Yeah.
was like, I literally said in the meeting, I'm not a brilliant guy, but wouldn't it make sense just to get the lawyers working on all the standard stuff? We can fill in the blanks later. And it literally, they looked at me and went, yeah, I guess we could do that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's
Yeah. And then you can see that all of a sudden, the time was starting to shrink because
yeah.
they weren't wasting it. Because when last client side job I had, I landed a big client in the medical industry, turned it over to the lawyers. 6 months later, paperwork still wasn't done, and I ended up losing the opportunity.
Right.
Like, that's kind of where I learned that lesson.
That's right.
No offense
That
to the
amen.
lawyers that are listening, but
No, yeah. One of the coolest inventions I've seen recently is the whole sign online things. There are three or four different, and it's just like do do do. I'm done. It's like, oh, I like that. But after our agreements go through the attorneys to make sure it's right, but after that they don't have to touch it, which is amazing because it speeds up the the speed to implementation for everybody,
yep.
and everybody loves that, the electronic signature stuff. So. Okay, Angela, I think you and I could probably talk for a long time because I've just got a whole list of questions to go. Let's do this. Let's pause. All right. First of all, who's a great client for you, and what are they struggling with or thinking about before they reach out to you? Then we'll tell them how to do that. But who's a great client for you?
So my background is in both B2B and B2C.
Okay.
So I'm agnostic when it comes to that. I've worked literally from wafer steppers, which are machines that make chips, to ice cream. So,
Okay.
and a whole lot of stuff in between. So my point is, I can learn your business
Okay.
in a relatively short period of time. I can't learn 30 plus years of marketing in the same time frame. Right?
Mm,
I wouldn't have that experience to bring. So from a revenue standpoint, I say 5 million and up.
mm-hmm.
B2Bs tend to around 75 million. That's the high end, because typically if they're getting up there, they've got somebody like me, and they're not going to hire me. Right. So
Right.
on the consumer side, it can vary. I mean, I've worked in the financial and luxury watches, and 150, $60 million, and they didn't have a me. So
Mm-hmm.
this kind of depends. I say my sweet spot somewhere between 15 and 35, 40. Part of my thing is I have to be consider, I have to be in the C-suite with you. I mean, I'm a fractional
Mm-hmm.
CMO, I'm not a
Yep.
marketing director. So I have to be there in order to make this, strategic recommendations that I do.
Yeah.
Um, and so really, it's companies that are looking to grow or struggling to grow.
Yeah.
So it's usually somewhere around revenue. And the first take on revenue is we got a sales problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I work with a lot of sales guys who bring me in because they don't have a sales problem, they have a marketing problem.
Yeah.
Growing up in this industry, it was always sales and marketing, sales and marketing, sales and marketing. But the reality is it's marketing and sales. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because marketing, from the pure sense, is out there creating the brand, generating revenue or awareness, driving top of funnel, and then eventually we do a handoff to the sales guys who bring it home. Marketing doesn't close that deal. Now,
Yeah.
consumer side, e-commerce, there's less sales guys and more
Right.
marketing, but it's kind of lost my train of thought. But
Sales. We were talking about sales and marketing and how they go together, and how those tend to be the bottlenecks. And
well, the
unfortunately,
bottom like that, what's where everybody wants to point when there's a
yes,
problem,
that's
right?
right. The finger pointing starts. Yeah.
Yeah, and so back to why do people bring me in?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's about revenue.
Mm-hmm.
I also get, and it's probably driven by revenue. We believe our messaging is really wrong. We don't have a presence. We don't have the presence in the market that we think we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally get, hey, we've been in the business for 40 years. We don't know how big our market is. That one surprises the heck out of me, but it
Yeah.
happens quite a bit. And then, or hey, we need to fix up our tactical stuff, our website, our social media. And then my goal with them is to say yes, but we need to do all this stuff first to make sure those are really efficient and working for you, versus let me just come in and change what you're doing. And so those are kind of the three. I have been working a lot this past year with in the M&A space.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's companies looking to sell, trying to understand if they get a valuation that's not real good, then I've been brought in to say, okay, how big is my market? Where are the opportunities? How can we grow? How can I get that valuation up? How long is it going to take? But if you think about what I just said, that gets back to everything I say I do. It's understanding the market, where those opportunities are. And then I also, and the flip side, saying, hey, I'm ready to acquire a company. And yes, we're looking at the financials, we're looking at the contracts and all of this. And my point, and I just sat in on a panel discussion, and the investment banker that was running it was like, I get all these other guys, but I'm not sure how marketing fits in this kind of a due diligence on acquisition. And by the time I was finished, he was like, I don't know why we never thought about this, because I need to validate that the market's even there. They could be telling you one thing, but if you're looking at numbers, that doesn't mean there aren't issues in the market or the competition or all those. So a deeper dive. So those kind of the two areas that I've been playing a lot recently. And then for some smaller businesses, which I haven't done, I've done it, but not recently, but I've started to add coaching and advising services. But for the most part, that kind of sweet spot is where I hang out in.
Sweet. I love it. So somebody's out there hearing this, they're going, this is a refreshing approach, finally. Where does somebody find you? How do they connect with you to at least take a next step, do some investigative work, and say, what can you help me? Where would they go?
Well, the easiest to find about me is LinkedIn.
Okay.
I have a big presence on LinkedIn. You can follow me. I publish a newsletter on LinkedIn. I do everything I tell my clients to do. So we're blogging, we're posting, we're doing all those things. And then from LinkedIn, you can get to my website, which is kind of the other resource. I have a bunch of free resources there, ebooks. I have a mini marketing course that people can take for free. A lot of videos, and those are kind of the two places that I think are the best. And if they go to my website, they can sign up for my regular newsletter, which has a lot more content that comes out a couple times. It's all educational for the most part. And those are the ways to get to me.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to grab those. I'm going to have those in the show notes for you listeners, so that as you're busy running your business or doing whatever you're doing, you can listen to this. I think before you do that, just go back and re-listen to this, because there were some nuggets in there that Angelo really laid out that are really important in help differentiate him, but help you understand how you need to be thinking strategically. So go back, re-listen to this, and then reach out to him. And I'll have all that in the show notes. Angelo, and this has been really cool. Very different approach on how you do things. Very, yeah, I'd say consultative, but it's because of your background to make sure that the business owner is not just focusing, dare I say, just on marketing, but understanding business growth. Marketing has a component, but so does sales, so does operations, so does finance. And you get this background, this very unique in all of that. So thanks for using your talents and abilities to be a blessing to business owners. Thanks for being my guest on Expert Speak.
Well, thank you so much. It's been fun.